your class has gone through and compiled a list of questions, what's going to happen then is I will be pasting them at the bottom of this screen here. Okay, and they will all be at the bottom and they will all be mixed up. They're not here yet because you have not made them yet. But when you click on this assignment, you should probably see all kinds of little stickies down here. What you're going to do then is you are going to take your stickies, and I am giving you 5 kind of big, broad questions that probably need to be answered in order to understand the phenomena, as well as help Joe make his decision when it comes to using ethical issues and using genetic information. So I have written the 5 we're going to call these the guiding questions, okay? Or the driving questions. The driving questions. These are going to kind of drive the activities that we are doing. So you are going to take the different Post-its that are down here, and you are going to click and put it under one of these categories. Do you think it's what determines whether a person will have a genetic disease? Is it a question that, if answered, would help determine about whether or not they inherited a genetic disease? I think I actually have little cards. Or do you think, right here, or do you think it is going to be, how do organisms inherit traits from their biological parents? So if it's a question that involves inheritance of information and how traits or behaviors or characteristics go from parent to offspring, if it's those types of questions, you'll put it underneath this column. If you're talking about what causes the difference between genetically identical organisms, so if you have like clones, for instance, or if you have identical twins, like for instance, I don't know if you knew this, but Mr. Rancourt is a twin, and he actually has another Mr. Rancourt that's out there, but they still have differences between them, even though they may be genetically identical. So what we're going to look at things that are outside of genetics that will cause these differences. So if you are looking at anything outside, your question has to deal with anything else that affects differences between organisms. That's what will go in this column. We're going to talk about how do mutations cause change, okay? So the differences have to come from somewhere. And the differences come from things called mutations. Mutations, you can probably think X-Men, are not the normal. They're like something that happens that is random, and it creates new different traits and varieties. And so we're going to look and see how these random mutations can kind of cause organisms to change or have different traits. So anything to do with these changes or mutations would go in this category. And then finally, how do inherited behaviors and structures, so we're looking at behaviors, the way organisms like animals or plants, how they behave, how they act, whether they grow towards the light or not the light, whether they seek out, like birds, do the bird songs to call for the females. So those are behaviors. So how do inherited behaviors and structures, so maybe the color of the feathers, for instance, increase the likelihood of successful reproduction? And so we're going to look at behaviors and structures that might help an animal or a bird or some other kind of organisms be really successful in passing on their traits. So if any question might go under that category, you can put it under here. So we're going to try to classify them as one of these 5 driving questions. When you're done, you don't need to save. It saves automatically. Just upload it or turn it in through your Google Classroom.